Hey y'all, I'm Haley.
And I'm Ryan.
And you're in the Brewing Happiness Test Kitchen. Today we're going to teach you how to make egg pasta without a pasta machine. So you're doing it all by hand. It's not as hard as it sounds. In fact, it's not very hard at all.
Nope.
So we're going to walk you through all the steps of that, and that's that.
And that's pasta.
That's pasta, yeah. Fresh pasta is so worth making. It is like 12,000 times better than box dry pasta.
There's no comparison.
And it takes 2 ingredients, flour and eggs, that's it. Because it's only 2 ingredients, the quality of those ingredients is really important. So the higher quality flour and eggs you're using, the more delicious your pasta will be.
And this pasta recipe was developed with all-purpose flour to make it really easy and accessible to pretty much anyone, because that's generally the most common flour around, but it'll work substituted exactly for the type 00 flour.
All right, let's go through the process.
Yeah. I start with 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, which is roughly 9.5 ounces. If you don't have a scale, I would suggest not tightly packing those measurements, but we definitely recommend getting a scale. It'll make
get a kitchen scale.
Yeah.
It sounds like something that feels superfluous in your kitchen, but I promise once you have one, it makes making any recipe so much easier because weights are way more exact. It's just very helpful.
It's very nice.
Okay, sidebar over. Let's make pasta.
Okay, so 9.5 ounces, 1 3/4 cups all-purpose flour, and 3 eggs. And all we're gonna do is get a clean, flat work surface, and we'll put our flour down and create a well, or a nest, if you will, in the center, and then we'll add the eggs right in there. From there, we'll take a fork, and just like you would be scrambling your eggs, or whisking your eggs for scrambled eggs, you're just gonna mix lightly, pulling in some of the sides of the flour and gradually increasing the size of that well.
It sounds like that would be a very hard thing to do, but the truth is if you just move your fork slightly, it'll start to incorporate flour, so you don't have to stress about it too much. It'll sort of organically happen.
Yeah, you want to just get them to a point where they're kind of like a loose batter. And it's also not the biggest deal if you do kind of break a wall and some eggs start spilling out. All you'll have to do is just speed up to this next step, which is taking a bench scraper, and you're just gonna fold all of that flour in, like I said, quickly, and kind of cutting the flour into the egg, developing a kind of shaggy, rough point if you're making biscuits right before they're just mixed.
A note on the bench scraper. This is what a bench scraper looks like. If you have never seen one, they also come in plastic. And then we've also used this tool, which is just a wooden spatula. It has a flat edge. It's not as easy because the surface you're working with isn't as large, but if you have something like this in your house and you don't have a bench scraper, this could be substituted.
Definitely can do it.
The end.
So once you have that bit of roughly mixed flour and egg, all the egg is at least in some kind of flour and there's nothing running away from you at this point, then you can just kind of scrape whatever is on your scraper into that pile and then just start kneading it by hand. You're gonna kind of pull back and then fold it over. If you've measured by just a measuring cup, you might have a little extra flour in there, and if it's getting dry and starting to kind of tear, all you need to do is, if you have a spray bottle, you could give it a little spray of water. Just gradually spray like once or twice until you have, it should be a little sticky, but nothing that's
you don't want to add a lot of water.
Yeah, nothing that's leaving anything on the table. And if you don't have a spray bottle, just quickly give your hands a shake it off a little bit, but don't dry them, and then just continue working. You want an unsmooth ball of dough that doesn't have any tears in it, and the seam on the bottom will kind of hold together.
It's a little bit like what bread looks like when you've kneaded it, if you've ever done that. Like it has some texture to it, but it's still, everything is held together.
Yeah.
Wrap it in plastic from here, as airtight as you can get
Yeah.
it, and you'll just let it sit for 20 minutes.
Yeah, 15, 20 minutes. Nothing long. You just want to let it relax a little bit.
After that, you
After
cut it
that-
in half.
Cut it in half with a sharp knife, and then you'll just knead one half at a time, except at this point, it's gonna start to smooth out. After it's sat for a bit, it might have absorbed a little bit more moisture, and you might need to add a little bit more to keep it from splitting or tearing.
It'll kind of look like Play-Doh by the end. You're gonna knead it for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, it'll be a little tacky, but nothing, you don't need any flour at this point on your bench. Then you're gonna wrap that in plastic as airtight as possible and work the other half exactly the same way. And then just let it rest for about 2 hours if you want to use it as soon as possible.
You could also throw it in the fridge and then do the shaping part the next day.
Exactly, you can make this a day ahead.
So it's been 2 hours and now you're ready to shape. So you'll take it out of the plastic, you'll put it again on a clean work surface that
Right.
you've dusted with flour.
Yeah, you're gonna use flour at this point because we are gonna roll it as super thin as possible and we don't want it to stick and tear. So we'll take a rolling pin,
Dust that with flour.
dust that with flour. You might need to add a little bit as you go also. But starting from the center of the dough, you want to press and work out and get that as, you know, pretty thin, because it's a lot easier to spread the outside out once that is thin versus like having the outside thin.
And you're looking for this to get really thin. Like if you, on ours, you can see the marble through our dough. And that's basically what you want. We really mean like paper thin when you're rolling it out. So this part is the most labor intensive part. And this is where people use pasta machines to roll
Yeah.
things out. But you can do it by hand. It just takes like a little bit of patience and it's an arm workout.
Yeah, it's a little elbow grease. Super thin pasta is really, when you're eating it, very delicate and just delicious and like really something special. But if you end up rolling it a little bit thicker, it's totally fine.
Still pasta.
It's still gonna be good. It might just take a little longer to cook. Keep doing it, keep practicing.
Yeah, you'll get better and better
and
at
you'll
rolling
get better
it out.
at it, but don't feel like, you know,
You failed
you
if
need
you
to
can't
keep
roll it.
rolling it out. Also, in this point, don't want it to be like super floury and like things are just sliding everywhere. You know, the gluten will kind of shrink back a little bit, and even after you're done, think you've gotten it to the point where it's as thin as you like it and you pull it up off, it's gonna pull back a little bit, and that's totally fine.
All right, so we've rolled it out and now we gotta shape it. So we're gonna talk through 4 different shapes, but pasta is, you know, there are endless varieties of shapes, so you could make some up if you want to, or you can follow our guide. We're just giving you general guides.
Yeah.
So we'll start with 2 noodle type.
Yeah, your long strand sorts of pasta. There's 2 ways that you can do this. I mean, there's probably a couple
There's
ways.
many ways. We're gonna show you 2 ways.
2 ways that
are very easy.
Yeah, you don't really need any special equipment for, especially you just need a knife. Is by just cutting strips however wide you would like them to be, you know, evenly as you can get them, just as the pasta has been rolled out.
That's a super easy way to do it. The other way you can do it is to sort of gently roll or fold the pasta onto itself, so it's kind of in a cinnamon roll spiral.
Yeah.
And then you'll just cut down the line in whatever thickness of noodle you want, and then you can toss that. Once you've cut the noodles, you want to toss them in just like a little bit of flour just to keep them from sticking to each other.
Exactly.
And then if you're gonna cook it right away, you can take it straight to the pot. If you're not gonna cook it right away, we suggest throwing it on a sheet tray or in something and freezing it, because that'll help it hold its shape.
It might be helpful to freeze it in stages while you're working if you're, you know, if it's taking you a little time to get that second dough rolled out, like definitely freeze it and so it doesn't stick to itself and give you just like a big clump.
But
and
you can
also,
just, store it in the freezer.
yeah, make a batch,
Yeah.
store some of it in the freezer, eat some now, and then you have some for, dinner or lunch.
It's way better than having a dry box of pasta in your pantry.
Yeah.
Having some pre-made freezer pasta that's fresh is
It's very nice.
clutch.
Any of these stages, the pasta can start to stick to itself, and especially if you're rolling and then kind of pressing down on it with a knife, if your knife isn't like super sharp, also you're going to add a little bit more pressure. So it's just important to have a little bit of extra flour at that point when you put it in.
So the two other shapes we're going to talk about are a tortelloni and then like a penne, like a round pasta basically.
Yeah.
And they're essentially formed the same way. You would cut it in your dough into squares, however large you want the finished product to be. And for the stuffed pasta, you would mix your stuffing, add just like a little dollop to the middle. You just don't want to overstuff it or else it'll...
Yeah, you want to make sure there's enough room on the sides of that stuffing that you can press the dough together without the stuffing pressing out or, preventing the pieces of pasta from sticking to itself.
So for the stuffed pasta, you would just put some filling in the middle and then press the edges together. Then if you want to make like a tortelloni, you can push the ends together by wrapping it around your finger. Same thing, you'll toss that in flour and you can freeze it or immediately cook it. And then the other way is to cut squares and then wrap those squares around like a wooden dowel, or we used like the end of a small whisk.
Yeah.
Whatever you have in your kitchen that's like round and...
Yeah, if you have like a wooden spoon that has a pretty even handle, that totally works. Maybe add a little flour to it. And you kind of want to press a little bit the points so that they stick together.
Okay, so to cook your pasta, you're going to get a big pot of water to a rolling boil over medium-high heat, and you want to add a good bit of salt.
Yep, you want it to be salty. This is the only point in the pasta itself's
journey
through
life
that it's actually going to absorb any flavor. Season pasta any way you want afterwards, but it's still not going to
absorb into the noodles itself.
It'll just be...
And you can't add spices to water and get them to absorb because
salt dissolves in water. The term for that is it's hygroscopic.
So that's why you add a lot of salt.
Yeah.
Makes your pasta delicious.
Yeah.
So then you'll just cook it for a couple of minutes. If it's frozen, it may take a little bit longer. If it's thicker, it may take a little bit longer.
Like frozen stuffed pastas will take a little bit longer, obviously. There's
some components to it. But the great part about fresh pasta is that you'll know when it's done because it'll rise to the top of the pot.
Yeah. Once you've added the pasta to the water, also is important, just like with dry pasta, that you give it a stir so it doesn't stick to itself or to the pot.
And then after that, we're not going to talk in this video about how to, like what to add to your pasta. You can do whatever you want to at home. We have another video where we're going to talk about 4 different ways to incorporate roasted tomatoes into pasta. So if you're interested in that, you can check out the link below. But for now, you've made pasta successfully. Congrats.
Great job.
That's all we have for this time.
Yeah, that's great.
So we'll see you guys here next time. Until then, I'm Haley.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're
Making healthy happen.